will come into a seated, supported position. Just taking a few moments to adjust yourself there and finding more balance across the sitting bones. Settling into your legs. Always taking support to the legs. If you feel like your legs are holding themselves up, you want to support the legs, especially today with restorative practice. We'll think a lot about negative space in our poses and kind of reverse engineering the poses so that we feel very supported. That way the body can truly let go. This family of poses is less about stretching, more about opening. So we're not trying to actively stretch muscle. It's more about joint and bone and opening the body. So give yourself as much support as you need throughout this practice today. Hopefully you have many props around you, like blankets and bolsters. And then joining the hands together in front of the heart, closing your eyes, looking down away from your brain, and just kind of tapping into the quality of weightedness, groundedness, sensing the parts of you that are meeting the floor, the prop, starting to take root so that you don't feel you end where those things begin, that you continue somehow. There's a lot of default tension holding in the body. So with each passing exhalation, just inviting a more settled quality to your body. Starting to identify areas where you might be holding or contracted or tense. As you identify these areas and begin to unwind and let go, notice how nothing bad happens when we do so. A lot of these tensions are left over from past experiences. Softening the face, the belly, the jaw, the tongue. Softening any hardness around your sense organs, many of which are on your face. And just staying long enough to witness the next several breaths. Try to keep the chest, the breastbone lifted as you bow towards your heart. Moving your hands down to your thighs. Lifting your head. Letting your eyes gently open. And welcome. The first pose we're going to do is called Mountain Stream, and it's simply lying down on your back and trying to fill in the negative space. We have some behind the neck, some in the lumbar, behind the knees. It kind of depends how much of the soft props you have. If you have to conserve, you might just find the largest gaps and fill those. I find it better to work with a rolled blanket rather than folded, to fill in those spaces. And you might have to play with the thickness so that you don't overdo it. You just want to simply support. So neck, lumbar spine, backs of the knees. And once you have arrived, just start to kind of power down anywhere that's still activated, and just try to settle into this support that you've set up for yourself. You might picture how water, it's called mountain stream here, water gently passes over stones in a stream, making its way around and over, letting these areas of your body really take on the full support that you've set up. How you might sense a change in the neck or in the lower back with that support you've placed. Maybe a more willingness to let go and not hold ourselves together. Notice your breath, how it shows up when you have such physical support. Maybe those default tensions are more likely to release and let go when you're more supported. Maybe you can already notice the mind is put at ease when the body is at ease. And just let your attention move throughout your body. There's likely areas that are still contracted, still in an effort state. And oftentimes when you shine the light of attention on these areas, they simply dissolve those tensions. You might notice your exhalation is elongating, something that happens when our nervous system settles. Try to bring an extra sense of heaviness and release to your shoulders, an area we tend to automatically contract. Same with the abdomen. For a few breaths, just noticing movement in the belly. And we're going to start to kind of deconstruct this pose. So you're probably going to want to roll to your side. And as you transition today, just do so in a way that's very present. Move at the speed of presence and be gentle. Some of these passive restorative poses, we don't realize how truly deep they are until we're coming out of them. We're going to come into banana asana. We don't need any props. So you can just move everything away. You're going to come back onto your back. And this is a fairly passive way to create an opening in the sides of the body. So we'll just start from reclining in a symmetrical way, and you're just going to shift your feet to the left without crossing them yet. And then raising your arms above. Clasp your hands together. You might interlock your fingers. In another class, we might fully extend the arms. Today, your arms can be just passively there. You'll probably have some bend in the elbows. We're finding that first edge, shifting the limbs to the left. You'll take your right ankle and cross it above your left ankle. And if you feel like you rotated the pelvis, just do your best to bring the pelvis to an even position again. And notice how the breath is finding its way into the right side body without any effort. You've just set up a shape in your body that will be conducive to a breath, finding an opening. And as the amount of sensation wanes, you may need to continue tracking with that physical edge, moving your limbs farther to the left. You may not. It may also be content throughout the duration where you are. And there might be some effort required to hold this shape, but really try to minimize it. You might have some action in the arms that isn't necessary. Your arms might shift when you let it go, that's okay. And just give a little invitation to the right side body, the distance between the shoulder and the hip, just to kind of spread apart a little bit more. You're just going to gently move the hands back to center, gently uncross your feet, and just start to step the heels over to the right. Slide your clasping hands over to the right. And then when you're ready, crossing the left ankle over the right ankle. Noticing the body settling into the shape, letting go of some of those default tensions. If there's any effort in the legs, see what happens when you just let it go. Just enough sensation to hold the mind in a present way. And then just to ensure that the pelvis didn't rotate at all, which is not usually great for the back, you're just going to come back to center. And you can tuck your hands, one under each buttock and toward the outer edges of the buttocks, creating a little bit of a cradle for the pelvis. So you're just sitting on the backs of your hands. You can align your head so that you're facing straight up to the ceiling. You might close your eyes, and everything is passive. And go ahead and start to bend the knees. We're going to do a series of poses with propping to the sacrum, still on our backs. So ideally it's a soft prop, not a block. If all you have is a block to work with, you might throw something soft over it, like a sweatshirt or a blanket. Otherwise, you can roll one or two blankets if you don't have a bolster, or you can use your bolster. And so we want the prop running with the width of the sacrum, so horizontally. Your hips should be kind of the highest point, not factoring in the knees. And then you'll elevate your feet. We're going to come into supported reclining child's pose. So you'll allow the thighs to yield to gravity and just start to drop toward the chest. Keep your chin tilted in toward the chest. And you can have free arms, or you might want to place the weight of your hands over the shins. But it's very tempting if you do that to make this pose active, and we don't want that. So try to be passive once you've arrived. I'm just starting to watch the evolution of the pose once you've set it up. There'll be some kind of waiting it out for some reflexes in the hips to start to soften away. You might notice areas of resistance in your body. If it makes it more passive, feel free to cross your ankles. And here we are in a forward bend, singular curve along the spine. So you might notice that the brain is a little quieter here. See if you can find a way to support greater ease in your hip joints. I find that crossing my ankles secures the hips to release a bit more. So throughout this practice, just noticing what it's like to have no agenda, to just watch quietly, passively. Most of our waking life, we are on an agenda. We have an agenda. We're moving toward, we're moving into the future. Just giving yourself permission to simply be, breath by breath. So we're gonna complement this with a mild back bend supporting bridge. So you can lower the feet one at a time. And you might widen your feet and let the knees move toward each other. This can make your pose a bit more passive. And try to roll the outer upper arms toward the floor, which helps the scapula move toward the chest. Keeping your chin and chest really nice and close. And even though you know pelvic tilting action for back bends, try not to engage, just simply accept the support of that soft prop under your sacrum. Drop the sacrum into that. Notice how the belly will follow and kind of hammock toward the pelvis. We're going to start to transition to Urdhva Mukha Paschimottanasana, so upward facing forward bend. So the legs are going to go up again. And the arms will go up as well. And you can be on the backs of your hands. You can have bent elbows today. And then start to extend your legs. And just like your child's pose, see if you can allow the legs to fall toward the chest. You don't have to have perfectly straight legs today. Just using the advantage of gravity here to sink the thighs toward the chest. When we're inverted in this pose, we try to take the chest toward the thighs. So again, some effort is required, but really turn the dial way down. Keep your chin and chest close, tilting the chin down toward the chest. And every exhalation, feeling those thighs continue to descend toward the chest. Again, in a forward bend, keep your gaze pointed away from the brain to support that quietness. So in restorative yoga, we put good stress on our joints. We put good stress on our organs. And the more you can kind of submit to that softening, that opportunity to soften, the deeper you'll go. Some can be counterintuitive sometimes. When we take away effort to go deeper. About 5 more breaths. Just observing the breaths. You don't have to alter your breath. Each pose will alter your breath for you. You can come out of it by bending your knees and stepping the feet to the floor one at a time. We're going to come into one more reclining pose. This is going to be supported fish pose. So one way or another, you're going to find the soft prop now coming behind the chest. So you're going to either shift without moving sideways, or you can shift by moving sideways. And you can take your arms overhead again. And ideally, your soft prop is big enough that you're able to place a little bit of weight down on or toward the crown of the head. It might not be the perfect crown of the head, but you're toward the top of the head, less on the back of the head. The legs are passive like they would be in Shavasana. And you have utmost support to keep your chest lifted. You don't have to do anything actively, willfully to keep the chest lifted. Breathing into a lift and a spread, just supporting that every in-breath. You can kind of watch the sternum in your mind's eye like the fountainhead, rising and spreading. Noticing here maybe the support of the in-breath. How the pose supports the in-breath. And keep your eyes pointed toward your cheeks, even though they're moving in the other direction. Just resist the eyes toward the cheeks. Keep the brain a little bit quieter. Make sure to notice where you're holding back. And start to bend your knees. You're going to find a way out, either rolling sideways, or you can keep shifting off that bolster, moving toward the end of your mat. But we are going to be turning over to our front sides now. The bolster, I'll just call it a bolster, but the same prop Now under the chest, coming into a supported Sphinx pose. So really generous space between your feet. Take some time centering up the thighs so that you're right on tops of the kneecaps and all 10 toes. And your elbows should be right under your shoulders, which means the bolster has to be that far back. And then you're going to take a prayer position with your hands stepping the elbows slightly forward and resting your head against your thumbs. So essentially, you're not having to activate anything. Feeling the pressure of the soft prop to the front body, pressing the breath to the back body. Another back bend, another supportive pose for in-breath. Staying long enough in all these poses to melt away those default tension patterns that we all hold. They live in our bodies, they're conditioning. In yoga, we try to do away with conditioning. That's living out of past experience. Just a few more moments. We'll come into supported heart chakra pose now. We're going to use the bolster to support the chest. You're going to find your way to kind of come onto your knees like you're coming into table pose. And this is the pose where we try to keep our hips in line with our knees. And you're going to place your chest down on that soft prop. And then you can either cross your right forearm to rest your head, or you could grab a block. I'm going to try to keep the arms passive, so you might also cross both arms. And often when we do this pose, we don't support the chest. So while you're here with the chest supported, notice how it might change the pose. Maybe there's a willingness for the shoulder blades to sink a bit deeper since they have that front body support. The translation of Anatasana is unstruck pose. The heart is the unstruck organ, before it's ever been injured or harmed or hurt. Start to bring yourself out by coming onto your hands. And you can turn your bolster now 90 degrees so it's running lengthwise. You might add some props. We're going to come into head supported downward dog. So if you know from past experience that you need a little more height, you could put a couple blankets or even a block on top of your setup. And just begin with a little bit of a wider position between your wrists and your knees. We want the hands just a little bit beyond the shoulder line. Your fingers spread, your middle fingers pointing forward. Your thumb joints not to their fullest extension, so about halfway from the index. Extra weight into your index and thumbs. Try to wind the arms in a way your inner elbows start to turn out. And then as you're ready, you can extend the legs and place the head. So you're going to just kind of intuit how long you can hold here in a quiet way. And then we are going to follow it with a supported child's pose. So when you need to come out of it, you'll find your way into a supported child's pose using your bolster to support the front body. And you want to be more toward the top of the head than the forehead so that the back of the neck stays really long and consistent with the rest of the spine. As you shine those inner elbows forward, keep your index and thumbs really anchored. Good weight bearing pose for the arm bones. Start to lower your knees if you haven't already. Taking the knees very wide and the feet close. Sinking your butt back toward your feet. And then taking that bolster and filling all that front body space with it. Rest one of your cheeks. Have your elbows wide so your shoulders can truly let go. And then just let the shape of the pose, the props and gravity and breath do all the rest. When we're halfway through, I'll let you know so you can turn your cheek. Even here, you're still probably holding on a little bit. So every exhale, feel some spreading, some expansion, some extension throughout your body. Maybe those hip joints are still a little sticky. Maybe the spine is a little tight. Maybe some holding back in the shoulders. Maybe adjust the arms to encourage a true release in your shoulders. Maybe the front ankles are sticky. Turning your cheek to rest the other cheek now. And here again, forward bending, very supportive of elongating the exhalation without any willfulness. The exhale is encouraged to flow out a bit longer than it would be if we weren't in this position. We're going to start to lead the pose by coming up. And you can keep facing that bolster, but we're going to come into a soft pigeon pose. So you can kind of rest on your right buttock and have your knees bent and the legs over to your left. And then the bolster you're going to align in front of your right shin. So it's parallel to the shin. So you can turn the bolster. And then you can come down onto your forearms if that's available to you. You might also need to build up some height to make that more accessible. You could put blocks on your bolster if you need to. And we're going to try to just kind of lean forward over that right shin. If you have a way of supporting your head, it's always better because it makes us quieter and more effortless. So you might again do like we did in Sphinx with your prayer hands to your forehead. You could also work with a block if that meets your head well. You're putting good stress on the right hip joint. Also some nice stress on the left hip joint, internally rotated. You might notice that you're able to go lower at some point. Once your hip is softened, you've moved through some of those onion layers. For a lot of us, we have tight hips and those tension patterns will show up. If they didn't before, they'll definitely start to show up in a hip opener. You might notice other body parts recruiting here to prevent sensation in the hip. I call the hips the octopus of the body because they're very clever at escaping these deeper stretches, oftentimes because of how tight they are. Just come through the next exhalation, and we will then come out just to switch the legs. So now we'll be addressing the left hip, crossing that left shin in front of us, the right leg over to the side, so we're internally rotated on that right hip now. And just always remind yourself that even though we do the same pose to each side, it's not necessarily the same experience. You might have to set it up differently. You might have to start at a different point. So just finding the first edge, maybe the head can come down, maybe you're going to start just kind of angling over the bolster. Your hands might be elsewhere on the floor. Sometimes the poses remind me of going for a walk with a toddler. And you set out with the destination in mind and realize quickly the destination may never arrive. And so you have to really drop into the moment, smell the flowers, stop and tie your shoes, all those things. So just be where you are in the pose. and trust that you will arrive at some point. And just see about a few more breaths, identifying if there's still some holding back or stickiness in the left hip. Just see if you can breathe into a little bit more depth and softening. And on an in-breath, you're going to start to make your way up and out of there. Just extend your legs out in front of you and use your hands for support. Just kind of anchor into your legs. Do your best to flex your feet. So you're pulling your toes toward you, really trying to spread the backs of the knees, engage the quadriceps muscles, aligning your knees if there's any unwanted rotation there from the work we did with the hips. So we're going to come into cross bolsters. And that means you can find two soft props, hopefully. And if you don't have two, you might have your two blocks be one of those planes. The cross bolsters, we have the top bolster running with the spine. So the bottom prop is going to be the horizontal one. So you're creating an X shape. And then the top one would be soft. So if you're going to use, if you have to substitute blocks, those would be on the bottom. And then we want to sit on top of that setup. So again, the hip crests are the highest point, and the chin and chest are forced to come together. And then your legs are slightly wider than hips, and you're on your heels, pulling the toes back toward you. And arms are unfolded as they would be in Shavasana. Just feeling that cascade of flesh moving from the navel toward the chest and down to the shoulders. And keeping the chin really snuggled in close to that little divot between your collarbones, keeping your eyes pointed at your cheeks. So there's some effort required here, but again, always minimizing that. So whatever isn't needed, do away with. You definitely can soften your face, your throat, your jaw, your tongue. The area between your eyebrows. Notice those big, healthy in-breaths here. Just imagine your breath inside your lungs, the full circumference of breath expanding out in all directions from the center point. Keeping the gaze pointing down. It's another way you can help yourself deactivate or minimize effort, not letting the eyes roll up. You're going to start to bend your knees. And I find it easiest to slide up here to come out of this pose. You can find a different way if it works better for you. And we're going to come into our chair pose. We're going to be putting our lower legs on a chair. So you can roll off to your side. If you'd like to put something soft on the chair seat to make it more comfortable, you want to do that. And then you don't have to, but it can be very supportive to support your lower back. And so maybe the bolster works for you. Maybe something that's less bulky might feel better. You kind of should know by now how your back is doing today. You might need less if the back is a little sore. So we want to support the sacrum with the soft prop, and we want to support the lower legs with the chair. And your legs can just kind of be floppy there. You don't need to hold them in any fixed position. You might have your knees wide, your feet together. And then your arms will be as if they were in Shavasana. So take a moment to roll the outer upper arms down. Feel the shoulder blades move up to the chest. And again, tilt your chin. You might rock your head to encourage the neck to lengthen. Remember that mountain stream pose and just finding a little support to the back of the neck, even though you don't have that prop there. See if you can recall that sense of support to your neck. So good here for the organ of the heart and the brain, helping the blood move up, up, up in the body. Using gravity once again. Keeping the gaze pointed down. Watching your body breathe here. Legs up the wall is also great for our mental health if we're in a kind of low mood space, mentally, emotionally. Very refreshing for the legs. And just notice again where you're holding back or supporting the pose with your own efforts, and do away with as much of that as you can. You shouldn't need a whole lot of effort here at all. Take the next 5 breaths and make yourself 10 pounds heavier. Now you're going to start to help your legs down. Again, you might move up the mat to come off that bolster. You might be able to help yourself move sideways. And we're going to sit just for a couple minutes. So you want to have good support underneath you, like a significant amount for pranayama, because we really need an erect posture for pranayama. We'll bolster and maybe also the support for the legs. If cross-legged, you're holding your own legs up. Then you want to take some blocks or blankets under the knees or thighs. And so first, we're just going to breathe normally, our hands resting on our legs, kind of closer to the hips so that the shoulders sit back. We oftentimes do pranayama reclining, but classically it's done seated. And the whole asana family is designed to help us sit and meditate and do pranayama. So all of the things that have come before right now are going to support this practice. So just take a moment to align yourself here, but differently than when we start class with kind of a neutral neck and a chin level with the floor. We want to tilt the chin toward the chest and also lift the chest toward the chin. Thinking of the highest aperture of the spine, and we're feeling it there, which is conserving the energy of the spine, kind of to contain it. Softening your face. Sometimes you see pictures of practitioners in pranayama. It looks like they're actively smiling, but it's more of just releasing the tension of all the muscles that make us frown or not smile. So soft cheeks, soft eyes, soft jaw. And just working with the in-breath, helping to lift and spread the chest, the out-breath to find a little more depth of Jalandhara Bandha, which is the chin to chest lock here. You might also engage a little bit of a pelvic floor contraction, so you're kind of siphoning off the energy at the bottom of the spine as well. And then we're just going to do a few rounds of Nadi Chodana, so alternate nostril breathing. So you can just release your posture for a moment. And we'll work with the right hand and fold the two first fingers in, so index and index and ring. Index and middle, index and middle fingers are folded in. And then we're going to work with thumb and ring, going back and forth to block the nostrils on the respective sides there. So one thing that happens is we tend to kind of clamp the elbow in. We want to imagine a little tennis ball here in the armpit, and that we're not going to squeeze the elbow in because that'll congest the energy of the armpit a little too much. So you kind of hold your elbow out to the side. You're going to be lifting and spreading the chest. You're going to be sitting up tall and tilting the chin toward the chest. And you'll start by inhaling freely, both nostrils. Top of the in-breath, you'll block with the thumb, right nostril, and you'll empty out the left. You'll inhale the left. Top of the breath, block the left, empty out the right. And you might use your thumb to spread the flesh of the nostril away to open that cavity a little more for a deeper experience. Inhale, same side. Blocking at the top, empty out the left. Maybe spreading the nostril a little more open with your free ring finger. Inhale, same side. Close it at the top of the breath, open the right, empty. Inhale the right. Closing, empty out the left. Inhale the left. Just a few more rounds on your own. Make sure you still have an open armpit. You're still in good posture, chest and chin closing in. And the next time you breathe in, you can release your hand and exhale both sides. And just taking the backs of the hands toward the knees, rest the backs of the hands toward the knees. Take the index and thumbs together, extend the remaining fingers out away from you. This is Jnana Mudra, which is meditative mudra. And just sit quietly for a few moments, noticing whatever effects there are from alternate nostril breathing. Maybe more clarity in the nostrils, maybe a different rhythm of breathing is here now. Maybe there's a quieter mental state. And then you're going to decide when it's the right time for you to gently transition to your Shavasana, creating whatever support you need. We don't want a chin and chest together anymore, so just make sure you have a neutral head position, which may require a little blanket under your head. You might use an eye pillow if you have trouble keeping your eyes closed without that. And also make sure you're warm enough and that you're not wearing your glasses. If you wear glasses, you're not touching things with your feet or your hands. Trying to really kind of pull away from the outer world, withdraw the senses. Everything that has come before now has led up to this. We've kind of set up ourselves for a successful Shavasana where we can really feel a bit more present. Fluctuations of thought are fewer. Even in Shavasana, there's some default contracted energy. And sometimes I think of the paintings done by Salvador Dali, where everything is just kind of like the paint dry dripping down. Just imagine your body dripping down into the floor, sinking deep roots. Even the face moving toward the back of the head. Cheekbones sinking into the skull. The abdomen softening toward the floor. The eyes resting in their sockets. At some point, taking a deeper breath in, and then just allowing a slow, steady release of that breath back out again. And when you've emptied that breath, resuming your automatic breathing. And start to bring very simple movement in through the fingers and toes. Let it move into the wrists and ankles. Maybe let your head roll from side to side. And then taking your hands onto your chest or your belly. And sliding your feet onto the floor one at a time. And then easing yourself to either side. Make sure to support your head with your hands if you need that. And keeping yourself in this quiet space. See if you can move to seated, really minimizing your effort. And once you're seated, joining the hands together in front of the heart. Just taking a few moments to sit with anything you notice, to give thanks. Let's take a deep breath in through the nose and let it go. The place within me that I know to be divine, I honor that place within each of you. Namaste. All right. Thank you all. I hope you have a great Monday. Enjoy this cool weather, and we'll see you soon.